Hey everyone, this is Bernard Ma, and we are live on LinkedIn and we are live on YouTube. Today's topic is artificial intelligence in times of COVID-19. And I'm super pleased to say I am here with David Carmona. David is
Hi.
Hi, David. David is the General Manager for Artificial Intelligence at Microsoft. Really good to see you again. I think last time we saw each other was in London, right?
Yeah, looks like very different times when we were able to meet in an event in London. Yeah,
Absolutely.
really
So,
missing that.
yes, and you're normally based in the US in Redmond.
Yes, I work in Redmond in the Microsoft campus. Yeah.
Yes, and now you are in Madrid. You've come back to stay with your family in these uncertain times.
Yes, I managed to be in the two places that were hit very severely by the pandemic, but lucky we are all safe. So very grateful to be able to work remotely and be with the family safe.
Absolutely, same here. So, are you planning to go back to the US at some point? What is Microsoft
Yes,
planning to do?
yes, I'm planning to go back in a few weeks. Yeah, 1 or 2 weeks. Yeah, I'll be there.
Good. So I am excited. What we are planning to do is I will keep an eye. I'm just looking at the messaging. I will keep an eye out for any comments that are coming in. So I hope people are asking questions in the live.
Please.
Exactly. We've had lots of really good questions come in already in the live stream that I did on Tuesday. We had over 1,100 questions and comments come in. So this was super exciting. So hopefully we'll have the same
We
today.
are yeah, we are confined at home, so we can be in the live stream like 48 hours. How's that?
Absolutely. So feel free to ask questions. I will keep an eye on this and hopefully give you shout outs to see where you're from. What hang on, there's something. Okay. I think we have. Okay, so we had a little issue on LinkedIn. So we are live now. So welcome, LinkedIn. I've just said we need to do a little reintroduction. So I'm here with David Carmona from Microsoft. You're the general manager for artificial intelligence at LinkedIn. I'm not sure why the short delay happened. We went live on YouTube and then I just realized we were not quite live on LinkedIn. David was just saying that he's normally based in the US and now you're in Madrid, but you're hoping to go back to the US soon. So today we're here to talk about the role of artificial intelligence, especially during difficult times like the one we're experiencing at the moment. And David, do you think that what do you see as the role of artificial intelligence during times like this when we are experiencing a pandemic?
Yeah, I think we need to structure it a little bit, right? Because it's so broad. The impact of this pandemic is so broad that is good to just separate in several buckets, right? So there are many models out there that are discussing, what are the different stages in the pandemic. I want to simplify it and just leave it in two, right? Because I think the role of AI will be very different depending on the phase that you are in. The first one, which I think everybody is starting to call it like the response phase, is where we are, I mean, as businesses, we are just focused on surviving, right? And I think the economy's growth, they have in their cover like the business of survival, right? Because that's the goal, is to finish that phase with the less damage possible so we can minimize those damages so we can start strong in the recovery. And I think in that phase, what we're seeing is making AI real, right? So we remove a lot of the long-term vision for AI, and we are just, accelerating the implementation to get value of AI today, which is very important. And we've seen that across many use cases that we can discuss later in more detail. But that's about the first phase. But then we have to remember that this will eventually, hopefully, be over, and it will be gradually. It is not something that will happen from immediately, right? But I think in that phase, AI, and people are calling that reimagining or rebuilding, but I think AI will be also critical in that phase, because at the end, when we go back to the what we call the new normal, right? Because you never go back to the normal that you were before. Companies will need to redefine themselves. And having AI to help in that redefinition, given that it's a tool that they will have available for thinking of new business models, new ways of engaging users, and so on, will be also critical and will leave like a second role, AI in that phase.
Very good. I completely agree with you. Just having a look at some of the people we already have, about 1,500 people on the stream, which is very exciting. I'm seeing Karen from Detroit. Hi, Karen. Catherine
I
Dallas. Modassa from Egypt. Sevda from Turkey. Augustin from Spain. So is again a completely multinational stream. I'm super excited about this. David, do you think that AI is more important today than, or less important than it was before the the pandemic started? Because AI was obviously one of the biggest business trends that we've seen. It was in the boardroom in most companies. It was a serious discussion. How can we leverage AI better? Has it become more important or less important?
Yeah, that's a great question that I get asked a lot of times. I think it's a difficult question because I think it's gonna be just different, no more or less important. So if you look at the progression of AI starting, I don't know, 3-4 years ago, you remember those times that when you met customers at that time, the question was, hey, what is AI? What is this AI thing? Should I be on top of that? Right? Then we saw how customers starting to talk and ask about, hey, how do I get started? So I believe you. AI is going to be important. How do I get started? And they got into this evaluation mode that I think we've been in the past years. What we started to see even before the pandemic, but now even more accelerated, is okay, enough. Enough pilot purgatory. I want to get business value out of AI. And that short-term view will be a dramatic change in the way that you look at AI. Now, is that more important or less important? Well, it is more important in the short term because people are going to be very focused on accelerating those projects. But it is true that the long-term discussions will hold for a while until we don't come back to that redefinition moment.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This is exactly what I'm seeing as well, that actually some of the companies that have asked the questions, what is AI, a few years ago, they are now looking at upping their scale and making it real. And those companies that have thought AI will go away at some point, they're now realizing that it's not going away, and they need to start asking those questions very seriously.
Yeah.
Do you have any really good examples of how companies are actually using AI maybe to tackle the crisis?
Yeah, I think we've been seeing a lot of like a huge search on certain use cases, and if I try to bucket those cases on like three main like scenarios, right, or broader use cases. I mean, one very obvious one is customer service. So we are seeing a huge surge of AI applied to customer service because we have like the perfect storm, right? So we have less bandwidth, we are limited as companies, but then at the same time, you have customers with new needs and therefore they need more help. Mm-hmm. And I see AI in there, of course, accelerating the projects that we already had on things like conversational AI. But beyond conversational AI, we also see AI doing things like trying to predict behavior so we can be proactive, so we can try to get on top of the customer demand before it happens. So that's one that I see all the time. An example, I mean, I can share many examples, but one that is aligned with these times could be the Red Cross. I saw recently an example of Red Cross in Australia, and they were using AI to help their volunteers to have those conversations, to reach out to COVID-19 patients, right? So very clear example, but we see it all over the place in all the companies. So customer service, super important. The other one that I see a lot is in general business process optimization. Mm-hmm. So we see how I mean, we're learning the hard way that business processes right now, the way that we have them implemented in the enterprise, they were not super agile or they were not super resilient, right? So they needed to have more flexibility, and therefore they are looking now how they can use AI to make it more agile, so shorter, more productive, and at the same time more flexible.
Mm.
And every industry has that problem, but it can. If I think of two financial services, very typical one, so they're seeing processes like fraud detection or things like credit score that are complete, I mean, not useless, but they have changed a lot. I mean, the situation is dramatically different. So you have to adapt those and make them more flexible. I was hearing the other day from a customer in India. They provide this called India Lens, and they provide like a credit platform for 50 banks in India. And they use AI to shorten the time, the internal processing time to deliver or to approve those credits by 50%. So in a time like this, that is heaven, right? Because you have a huge demand on that you can serve with AI. So we see that in retail also a lot. Supply demand are completely chaotic right now. So you want to shorten those cycles, make that more agile. So a lot of things to do in business processes. And the last one, the last bucket that I see right now is in general employee productivity, because we have another perfect storm in there. So our jobs, everybody's job is getting more complex,
Mm.
but we are not as productive. So we have many other things to take care. And any tool that AI can provide to help the productivity of the employee, that is very, very welcome right now. And that can be from things that are just removing repetitive tasks to things that are more about making decisions. So capturing a lot of data and then support me on making a decision, which is even more important now.
Very good. I completely agree again. I think last time we spoke, I ended up saying I could actually sign every sentence you said to me, and
I had the same feeling with you. Yeah, this is going to be an easy conversation because we agree on almost everything. Maybe the goal for today is that we have to disagree on something. How's that?
maybe we can try that. Yes. Let me just have a look at some of the comments coming in. Again, we've had lots of people joining. Serhat from Turkey, Nita from Chicago, Hector from Richmond, Virginia, and a great shout out to Penny. I think Penny has been on every one of my live streams from Coventry. She worked for Warwick Business School. I've got Hiam from Beirut, Ashish from Delhi. And one of the questions was that the role is from Christian Kandadai from India. And Christian is asking, what's the role of AI in predicting pandemics as well as in finding a vaccine and in drug discovery? Any views on that?
Yeah. Why even broader than that? So let me, because the same scenarios that I just discussed for any industry, they apply very well to healthcare, which of course is now more important than ever. So let's do that, and then I will double click on vaccine and drug discovery, because I think there are amazing things happening there with AI.
I just saw another question from Julie Wagner from Adelaide in Australia, and Julie asked regarding Microsoft's partnership with adaptive
Yeah.
biotechnology. So maybe you can reference that as well, so you can answer
Yeah,
three
and
questions.
that one is very timely because we just had the news today. So yeah, good one. Okay, so let me try to structure this. So let's start with, so if you apply the three same scenarios that we said before to health, they map very well, right? So you have we started with customer service.
Mm.
Customer service in healthcare is being amazing. What we have seen in the past weeks, almost. So we have seen how healthcare organizations and governments are using conversational AI to help support or lower the load that we have now in doctors and nurses, right?
Mm.
So very, very important, given the almost collapse of the healthcare system.
Mm.
Just to give you an example, we have a platform in Microsoft. It's called the Healthcare Bot Service. It's a bot platform that is focused on healthcare, right? So it is compliant, things that are very unique to healthcare. And we release some templates that are targeted at COVID-19 scenarios. We have seen just in the past few weeks, we have seen 1,200 bots deployed with that, right? So imagine that it's reaching like 80 million people that have reached out to one of these bots to have a self-assessment that then is redirected appropriately to the health system, right? So very, very interesting. So that's on customer service. Now you apply business process optimization to healthcare. That is critical. We have also the system completely overloaded. So every single optimization that you can do on things like medical supplies, on things like even hospital space, that is going to save lives. So we have seen a lot of that on helping even doctors make better decisions based on that analytics that you add on top of the data that you have. So super aligned with that. But then by far, of course, the most inspiring one is the question that we have. So I fully agree. That is one of the key areas of AI, which in general it applies to all the verticals, is how it can augment people capabilities, right? And in this crisis, the real heroes are those researchers, doctors, nurses that are out there, both like in the front line in the hospitals, but also researching for vaccines and treatment, right? And AI, I mean, just like it applies to every other subject matter expert, it can apply very well to that, right? So we have seen, I don't know, let's start, for example, with frontline workers, right? So we have seen AI helping doctors making better decisions. We have seen how it applied to the patient's pattern. We can even identify high-risk patients where we know that the COVID-19 virus is going to have a special hard hit, right? So we can be aware of that when the patient is in the hospital. We have seen just providing knowledge to the doctors, just keeping doctors up to date on the huge amount of information that is available to them is crazy. So I was just working the other day with a hospital. It's a very, very simple scenario, but just providing a mobile app for them to understand the interaction between drugs so they can avoid any potential bad interaction. So every second that you provide there of productivity is hugely important. So very, very interesting. Now on the research side, now to end on the question, that was a long answer for the question, but on the research side, AI is playing, I think, I don't know where to start in there, but definitely there's a lot going on how to extract knowledge. So think of that same scenario that I was discussing for the doctor, but now apply for a researcher. So we just recently published this data set that is included like 50,000 articles on COVID-19. Who can read 50,000 articles? It's impossible. So using AI, we can extract knowledge, identify patterns, checking things that we're researching, so we can accelerate that research. So very important. The other one is of course even more inspiring. That is all about really putting AI core reasoning with the researcher. That is the most inspiring use case because it's the perfect example of the machine and the human working together. So you can see things like, I don't know if you saw this one, but this is super interesting, that usage of AI. But it's putting AI at work, identifying potential candidates. For, in this case, the one that I read was on antibiotics, right? But they're also applying it for treatments and vaccines for COVID-19. So it's just by the ability of looking at millions of potential molecules and then trying to map with existing knowledge of molecules that are working for specific bacteria, how we can extrapolate that to find new molecules, and then working in partnership with the researcher. No, it's amazing. The particular question, so now stepping back on the partnership with adaptive biotechnologies, that's one of the areas that I'm more passionate, because it's a very revolutionary idea. So the idea, and it's not specific to COVID-19. So we started this partnership more than 2 years ago. But the idea is to create kind of, think of it like a universal blood test. And in that universal blood test, what you're able to do is to just being able to do early diagnosis on a broad spectrum of diseases. So instead of testing for a particular disease, you can just test all at the same time, because what you are doing is having like an immunosequencing of your body. So it's an X-ray of your immune system. So it's able to map the T cells that are found in that blood sample with diseases, and we do that using AI. So now what we just announced is applying this same idea to COVID-19. So it can be used, one, to add another testing mechanism to the two that we have already, which is very important nowadays, but then also understanding better what is the immune response to that, to COVID-19, which can also help in the vaccine development. So pretty amazing stuff that is happening. And by the way, all of that from the beginning in the partnership, we announced that all of the data captured this way will be publicly available for the researcher community to build on top of that.
Great examples. Let's have another look at a few questions here. We've got Solomon from Kenya, hello. Arthur from Albania, Chris from Newfoundland, and Vivian from San Francisco, Jing from Detroit, Nikki from Canada. There's one question come in from Priya from Georgia. AI has a strong presence in the field of education. How does Microsoft AI impact and contribute on education, especially in higher education? For me, when I talk about the use cases that make me most excited about AI, it is healthcare and it's education. So
Yeah.
Have you got an example, a use case to share in the education space?
Yeah, first thing is I couldn't agree more. So actually, if you go to, so we have a free resource for everybody to follow. We call it the AI Business School. It's in the Microsoft.com website. And in AI Business School, one of the learning paths that we created, because we think education deserves like a specific treatment, is actually education. So yeah, we fully agree with the huge potential of AI in education. And again, trying to put some order into the thousand of use cases that we can talk in education, I tend to separate it in two main scenarios. One are those use cases that are augmenting the teacher. And we have amazing things that we're seeing across the world on how, for example, it can help the teacher or the professor to scale with individualized treatment for their students, right? So you can think of custom learning paths. You can think of identification or early identification of potential dropouts. So all those tools that are helping the teacher to do their job better. And then you have a set of use cases that are more about augmenting the student. And in that one, we also see very cool things in general on everything that can help the process of learning, like knowledge augmentation or knowledge consolidation, extraction, and so on. But then in particular, to get education to more people. So we see many cases about using AI to help to bring education to people with disabilities, physical disabilities, like hard of hearing, right? So there's one with the RIT, the Rochester Institute of Technology. If you want to look for it, they are using AI to bring their deaf students into the education system, right? And you also have things even for cognitive capabilities, right, that can also be very beneficial. So if there's one thing that I would encourage people to watch, is that as part of that AI Business School, we invited a professor that I'm a huge fan of him. He's a professor, I think, mechanical engineering in a university in Australia. He's using AI in a very interesting use case, because in his case, he was already doing like remote learning using Teams in his case. And I mean, once you move to remote learning, you have new challenges, like keeping the student engaged, right? And many other challenges that he's addressing magically with AI. So he actually got like a 900% increase in engagement from students by using AI techniques in that collaboration.
That's
Very, very cool.
great example. Yeah. So education, I'm super passionate about, and my wife is a teacher, so we have those discussions all the time where she argues that you can't replace teachers, and maybe you can augment them and get the best of both worlds.
Exactly.
And also you mentioned the AI university. I think this is a great resource, or the AI Business School, which is a great resource that I love. So highly recommend.
Thank you.
Anyone that wants to learn about AI, is all free. We've got more people on the channel here. We've got Kanan from Abu Dhabi. We've got Shirley from Ecuador and Hisham from Palestine. So it's a truly global stream. We've got Kevin from Ireland and Louis from Portugal and Jinan from Jamaica and E from Vietnam. There's a
Wow.
yeah, there's a question come in saying what are some of the barriers that companies will face when they want to adopt AI? And I guess we've now learned from lots of companies that have experimented with AI and they've made mistakes and we can learn from this. And then there are lots of companies that are now want to scale it or want to implement it. What would you say? What do you see as some of the biggest barriers?
Yeah, and I think exactly right. So I would position the question on one particular step that I think many enterprises are facing, which is what you just said, right? Is moving from that pilot purgatory to having a clear impact. So connecting AI to the business impact, right? And the barriers are different. So it's not the same thing if you're starting than if you are in that phase and you want to make it real. The two, just to make them in broader things, the two main themes that I see all the time of companies struggling on that transition between pilot to production.
Mm,
One is I mean, it may sound too generic, but we can go in more detail. But it's all about having a comprehensive strategy.
mm,
So it is very tricky to it is, or I would say that it's much easier to focus on a narrow use case of AI. So let's do this pilot, let's get some results, and let's move on, than having AI at scale in an organization. When you have AI at scale in an organization, that's when you see the big impact, but it's not the same thing. So you have to think of things like how do you transition from, because usually I'm sure that you see this as well. So usually when you are in pilot phase, what you have is a very expert, and they call it usually a center of excellence of something like that in a corporation, right? And they are the ones who are on point to do all the life cycle of the project.
mm,
That is great, but that doesn't scale. So
mm,
when you are moving into a scale phase, you need to change the role of that center of excellence. You have to put them to work to empower others to do
mm,
the same. So the role is still centralized. So it's not that we have to kill the center of excellence, but we have to change the role so they support the business units and
mm,
they empower them to really scale AI in the organization. So that for me is a big one. So looking at it from the organization side, the
mm,
other big change is that the moment that you do that, the moment that you include the business in that conversation and you put them and you empower them, then you face the next big barrier, which is the cultural change that you need. So this is not anymore creating a department. This is a truly broad culture change that you need to implement in your company.
mm,
And there are three things that I usually highlight on those attributes that you need to focus for that cultural change. One is empowerment. So
mm,
one is really they need to feel empowered and encouraged to do AI. So we have seen that even in Microsoft. I can tell you a story in Microsoft that we have in this AI business school that we tell the story, and it's in our financial department. So we started the AI transformation of our financial department like kind of top down, right? So hey, let's decide what are the big priorities in here, and then let's cascade that down.
mm,
That doesn't work. So you have to go the other way around. So you have, because you're going to get a lot of resistance and you are not going to get the buy-in from your business units and your business users on that. So if you change that, if you first empower them to be part of that process and then they become part of it, it's a very different motion that you have in your company. So
mm,
that's the first attribute. The second one, and this is a struggle for many companies as well, is data centric, right? So it's like a requirement. If you don't
mm,
have a data centric culture, it's very difficult to create an AI centric culture. So you need to make sure, not only, I'm not talking only about the infrastructure. So yeah, of course you need data lakes and you need data warehouses and you need to modernize your data state. Absolutely, completely agree. But then on top of that, you need to make sure that people are encouraged to create, to consume, to share that data for this to be successful. And then the third one, which is connected to the other two, is really skills. So you need to make sure that aligned with this transformation, you face upfront the reskilling that is going to be needed. And not everybody, not every business user has to be an expert on AI. For example, coming back to my example in Microsoft, we actually deliver a training to most employees in our financial department, even if they had nothing to do with technology, at least to be aware of the possibilities so they can be part of the conversation, and it's not like throwing things over the wall. So those three things is the first question that I always ask with a customer is, hey, this is great. I love this AI transformation plan, but do you have a culture transformation plan, including a data state modernization and including a reskilling plan? Very critical.
Hallelujah! I completely agree. As you know, for me, your AI strategy has to start with your business strategy. It's all well and good playing around with little experiments and testing the waters, but any organization who wants to be serious about AI has to start with their strategy, and this involves cultural change. So for me, lots of organizations that I help with all of this, they realize actually they have to invest as much resources in terms of time and money in cultural change than in technology, and this is something that is very often overlooked. I find so. Great point.
Agree.
And skills is still a massive challenge for organizations. If you are a tech company, it's easy for you to recruit talent. If you are a retailer that is maybe not Amazon, how do you then make this? How do you attract talent? How do you attract machine learning engineers and so on? So this is a real challenge. Do you have any tips of how you actually attract talent?
Yeah. So the first thing though is that I usually recommend to start from your with your employees. So and I think we're learning that a lot. That hey, there's a lot of talent, and I even had like maybe for another for another session, but I even worked on a mapping on not traditional roles, but roles that you probably have in your company already, that can evolve into the new roles that are needed in AI, right? And there's a path there, and we shouldn't underestimate the power of reskilling, right, of or upskilling in those areas. So that's the first thing that I would say. Then for talent recruiting, well, the other thing that I also bring is that you have to start from your strategy, because depending on your strategy, you're going to need different roles, so it's not the same thing. And I usually divide this like in two big buckets, right? So you have to separate in your company what are those things that are commodity, in the sense of, hey, they are horizontal to every company. Like think of in a sense, I mean, without underestimating, but things like customer service or marketing or sales, those are functions that are very horizontal to every industry. But then find those that are very unique to your company. So things where you have a special expertise or data or IP or something that makes your company, right? Those are the ones that you need to focus with custom development. So don't try to hire like a battalion of data scientists and developers to reinvent the wheel on all the processes. Just focus on a few one. Maybe you don't need that many people, right? And then for the others, you can start looking at roles that are, I mean, the market is now better than ever. So you look at the solutions that are out there, and you don't need to build. In some cases, you can use even out-of-the-box SaaS solutions. In other cases, you can use pre-built AI services like cognitive services, where you can just use transfer learning to customize it for your scenario. So those are perfectly fine scenarios or solutions that you can apply, and you don't need that. Now, when you get to attracting net new talent, I mean, we are doing our best, all the companies, right? So I think there's a lot there on both. I think we need to do a lot on working with the, let's say, with the input, right? So with the people that are getting into the market, I think we need to do a lot more in there to make sure that the learning and the academy in the world is more aligned with the new needs. And so anything that is collaborating with local universities, that is about empowering that I find it perfect, right? And then this may sound a little bit lofty, but I truly believe on that, and it's the concept of making sure that you hire people by providing your mission, right? So you need to find a purpose, because it's super clear. So and we see that all the time, how people with a purpose that are aligned with your mission, they're going to be, one, more likely to be attracted to your company, and two, they're going to be more likely to deliver on your company's mission.
Couldn't agree more. So for me, it's about building this this employee value proposition. It's about saying,
Exactly.
how do I attract talent in general, and then actually focusing on your own employees, and then partnering where possible, but also leveraging technology, because so much is now off the shelf, is software as a service. So there's easier than ever before to actually make this happen. Perfect. We have other people on the channel. We've got Michelle from Philadelphia. We have Wad from France. Lamine from Togo, and Emmanuel from Jamaica, Ari from Argentina, and a question come in saying, what are the risks around artificial intelligence? I think no conversation about AI is complete without addressing some of the challenges. I think when you talked about organizational culture, I think demystifying AI is really critical for organizations, bringing people on board, saying this is not this scary technology that will take over the world and replace all our jobs. Actually, that I believe that it will make the world a better place. It will make our jobs better. It will augment them, but it will hopefully make them more human. So what's your view on risks that companies are facing? And I think there were some related questions. Terry Lewis from Florida, what are the biggest risk implications of AI on society as a whole? And what does Microsoft view as their role in mitigating those risks? And Sajay Tandon from India, what are the dangers of AI in things like online marketplaces, where you can use this to tweak different rates of the same product and so on? So using AI to do the opposite of engaging and making customers happy and probably exploiting them. So what are your views on risks and
and I like the flow of those questions, because I think they highlight the two things that we have to look at. So one is, I mean, even if you don't think beyond your company. So let's imagine that you are super selfish, right? And you are just looking at the success of your company. Any transformation comes with risks. So you better consider those risks from the get-go. But then the beauty of the questions, and that's why I like it even more, is that that is not the point. The point is that we as companies, as an industry, we have a broader responsibility here. So at the end, AI is not going to be successful if it's not trusted by society. And we can only do that is we all collectively, not only especially technology providers. So I won't say that we are not responsible. Of course, we should provide the practices and the tools, but then also collectively with our customers and even with public organizations, how we can look at this, right? And now, the process of looking at it, I like to think of it as three things. So one, or three phases. One, I think, thank goodness we passed, which is acknowledging we have risks and we have challenges with AI. I think that was the conversation maybe 2-3 years ago, and we are past that. So now everybody agrees that AI comes with challenges that we need to address.
From your perspective, what would you say are the key challenges?
So if you look, for example, the frame that I use for that is the principles that we published in Microsoft like 3-4 years ago. So those were, so we got together and we created an internal committee. It's called the Ether Committee, is still active, of course. And we just look at what do we think are the challenges with AI, and what is our positioning, our public positioning to those challenges. So how are we going to consider those in our development, right? And there are things in there, 6 of them, but there are things in there like transparency, absolutely critical with AI. If we think of AI as a black box, that is not great, right? So we need to provide transparency on the decisions, especially if they have an impact on the decision that AI is making. There are things like privacy, of course. So the data involved in AI, you have the temptation to loosen your privacy requirements, and couldn't be worse. So we have to be even more restrictive and responsible with privacy than ever before. Things like, for example, fairness. So we know that AI is trained on real data coming from the world, and the world has bias. So your AI algorithm is going to carry that bias with it. So we have to, or even if it's not like artificial bias, but maybe it's perpetuating existing realities in the world that you don't want AI to continue to push for them, right? So think of gender equality or things like race equality and so on. So
Mm.
it is very important that we consider that from the get-go. So like that, we have six, and they are all very, very important. Accountability is another one very important. Things like what's the word for that? Resilience. So being able, so as AI becomes more and more critical, we need to make sure that AI is reliable, and we have it in there. So
Mm.
those are the high level principles. So that conversation super important, but I
Mm.
think we need to move into a new conversation, and I'm seeing that, and I'm very happy with that, because one thing is acknowledging you have a problem, and then the next thing is doing something about it, right?
Mm.
And there are two things in there, and I can even use Microsoft as an example, right? So we started with that Ether committee that I was mentioning before, that was very focused on, hey, what are the problems here, right? And what is our positioning on those problems? But then we created what we call the Office of Responsible AI, which
Mm.
is an organization in Microsoft which is responsible of taking that positioning, those principles, and
Mm.
making them happen. Is establishing the internal processes, procedures, guidelines, and so on to make sure that teams in Microsoft are delivering aligned with those principles.
Mm.
And I think one critical thing in here is that as vendors, we have also the responsibility to share our learning. So we are all learning in here, and we're learning as we go through it. So, for example, in our case, we just released, I think it was like a couple of months ago, a new resource center that is 100% focused on responsible AI. So you have in there our internal practices, guidelines, and what we use internally, so you can decide to use it if you want to, or to build on top of those. But then the third thing, which I think is a very interesting topic into, is the technology. So we talk a lot about the innovation on the latest neural network architecture, but we don't talk enough about the technology innovation that we have to do to make AI more responsible. And
Mm.
those are equally, if not more important. And we need to make sure that they are like progressing in parallel. So
Mm.
if we move one faster than the other, then we're going to get in trouble. So that definitely was one of the key goals in Microsoft Research, and we've been delivering technologies aligned with each of those principles. So for fairness, you have things like fair learn. For transparency, you have interpret ML. For privacy, you have homomorphic encryption, differential privacy. So all of them available for our customers to use, either by open source, which we release, or integrated with Azure. So that I think will summarize a little bit this big conversation, which is responsible AI. Super important. So glad that we had that question.
Yeah, no, really good question. And something is so important. I think every company needs to seriously think about how they're approaching AI, and I guess if they have the right organizational values, AI needs to align with this. And on top of this, we have increasing regulation that will make it more important for companies
Yeah.
to do all of this. Let's look at some of the people on the live stream. We've got Dave from Kansas City, Dr. Guna from Egypt. We have got Mario from Mexico City and Nahiha from Qatar. Please submit any questions. We've got Mohammed from Pakistan, Francis from Kenya. What David agreed to kindly is that David will head to the LinkedIn thread afterwards and have a look at some of the questions. Any questions that we haven't had a chance to answer today, we will hopefully get to. We'll do our best, at least. There's one more question. What are your future prediction for AI, especially after this coronavirus pandemic is finished, or we are more in control of it? What are your future predictions around AI?
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a very good one. And I think it is aligned to that phase that we were mentioning at the beginning, that reimagine phase that we touched at the beginning, but we didn't go in more detail. So let me go a little more in detail on that. I think there's if there's a theme that I would characterize that phase, is really to put AI into action, and you do that, and I think we mentioned some of that before, by scaling AI. So we need to put AI at scale, or to embrace AI at scale in the organization. And what does it mean to put AI at scale? It's all about connecting it to the business. So it starts with something as foundational and simple, which is the goals, the metrics that we have in the beginning of any project related to AI. So I think we are coming from times where we are measuring AI for things like input metrics, like accuracy or performance and things like those. And one of the things that we need to do as organizations is to start to use output metrics to make sure that we prioritize and then we measure the success of an AI project. Things like revenue, cost savings, customer satisfaction, and so on. But then for me, the important part is not, I mean, it's relatively easy to define a metric. Now, the important part is really to be aligned with the metric across the entire development life cycle. And the funny thing is that we have gone through that in software development in the past, and we call that DevOps. So it's the ability to bring together the team from a multidisciplinary team. So you have the business users, you have developers, you have data scientists, you have IT operation, everything in the same team, and align them not to their specific goals, but to the broader business goals. We did that for software development. So the equivalent of that on AI is MLOps, and it's critical. So if there's one thing that I would encourage companies to do to really scale AI in the organization, is to embrace MLOps and making sure that they create those multidisciplinary teams, that they come together, aligned with the business goal, and then quickly iterating in the solution so they can be more agile on that.
Great. Just had a very kind comment from Lisa saying, super session, thank you very much. And Mona, also a great session. So thank you. We appreciate
Thank you.
comments. What are the future use cases that get you excited, David? What do you think? What sectors, what industry, what use cases are you really excited about?
Yeah, I think, well, it is connected to what I was just mentioning, right? So to make that happen, to scale AI in your organization, so it's not only creating that MLOps cycle, right? But it's also to bring AI to everyone. And I think one of the big use cases that I'm more excited about is not only, so right now, if you look at business users or anybody who's not technical, their role on AI is just like a target, right? So I use AI, which is infused into an application or something that I'm using, right? And I think the next step in that in the future is really not only to consume AI, but also to enable those users to embrace AI, to create AI, and to be able to have some degree of freedom so they can augment their roles by using AI. There are many things in here. I think one in particular, so let me highlight maybe two that I'm especially excited. One is a little bit of a technology trend, but just like we have seen many years ago that the more data that you add to a model, the more accurate that model is, I think we are now experiencing another renaissance of AI on increasing the size of the model, so adding complexity to the model. So just to give you an example, the model, so this was a model that we released, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. So the one that was able to get human parity on image classification, it was a residual neural network. That one, which was human parity on, on image classification, was like 60 million parameters. Like a month ago, Microsoft Research released a model with 70 billion parameters. It was the biggest model ever. So why is that important? It's not, well, yeah, of course, it has more accuracy. It is amazing, but it's not only that. The key thing of that model is that it's truly a multi-purpose model. So you can train that model on a huge amount of data that not all the companies may have, and not all the employees have access to the expertise required to that. But then you can customize that for your specific scenario. And
Mm,
that will open the door for many companies and many employees in existing companies who can now play a different role in that democratization of AI. So super excited with that one. And we actually use it in Microsoft. So we move from a model where everything in Microsoft, so you think of Office, you think of Bing, you think of Azure, they were creating their own models to
mm,
now having these centralized massive models that they can customize in a fraction of the time and with less skill. So that's one that I'm very, very passionate. The other one, and I think connected to the conversation that we were having before on researchers for the pandemic, and it's about AI reasoning. So we have to bring AI to subject matter experts, right? So think of those roles with highly cognitive tasks
mm,
that we are always talking about AI for repetitive tasks. And yeah, that is great because it can free us to do things that are more important. But what if they could help us to really augment our cognitive capabilities? So think of the example of that researcher that I was explaining before. So
mm,
one in particular, one company that we're working that I'm amazed with the progress in there is Novartis. So Novartis is a pharma company,
mm,
and in their case, so the partnership that we're doing with them is to bring AI to 50,000 employees, and they have like 100,000. So that is bringing AI to every discipline: researcher, manufacturer experts,
mm,
sellers, and so on. And in their case, it's not about consuming AI. So they have the ability to use pre-existing models, but then mix them and match them and apply new things and looking at clustering and do things in a self-service manner that I
mm.
think is super exciting to see where we can get next. And just to finish, just to tell you one more, because I can't leave this one behind, is autonomous systems. So I think autonomous system, we will see it also very aligned with the concept of bringing AI to employees. I think we're leaving a role behind, which is engineers. And I'm not talking about software engineers. I'm talking about like mechanical engineers and so on, right? And they are the ones building things. And those things that went through that process of automation, now they will go through the process of being autonomous, right? So another big trend that I think we will see very, very soon.
I very much agree. David, we still haven't found anything where we
Oh my God, that we're finishing. Okay, maybe the next one. Do we have more? Please tell me that we have more so we can disagree.
we have one more question. Let me just have a look from Steve Shaw, and he's saying he's asking this for a friend. He is from Sydney, Australia, and he says, "How is Microsoft AI different to other AI solutions?"
Oh my God. So hopefully we don't disagree on this one, Bernard.
I really hope not. Yeah.
So without getting, because it was not my goal, of course, to do like a commercial or anything in here, but this was a question. So at least let me share how we look at AI, and then you listeners can decide if that applies to you or not. But when we look at AI, we look at it from three different like unique principles, right? One, a principle that we have on our way to approach AI is
Mm,
really looking at the innovation. And, so we have Microsoft Research, we have 11 labs in the world, we've been pioneering many techniques for AI. But our unique approach is that as soon as we have those breakthroughs, we make them available for our customers.
mm,
So just to, I think I was mentioning before the ResNet approach, right? So the residual neural network on image classification. So the same month we expose that neural network as a pre-built Azure Cognitive Service, and at that time it was called Project Oxford. It was we were the first big cloud vendor providing these pre-built services that developers could use without data science knowledge, right? And it was using the same research, this ResNet that we were developing from the research point of view. So that's something that we always keep in mind. It's not only research for the sake of research, is meaningful research that can help our customers. So the other thing that I would say is really the next step of that is really to make sure that we provide them a very comprehensive cloud platform that can bring that to every company and every role in those companies, right? So yes, we put a lot of energy on Azure as a platform for data scientists and developers, of course, and we're focusing on productivity, scale, and so on, of course. But then we're also adding things like, you think of the Power Platform. which is in a way our way to democratize AI, so business users can also be part of that, and they can. We have seen it a lot in this crisis, right? How even business users or people in IT, they were using the Power Platform to create like super agile AI solutions that they can deliver very quickly to optimize their own business processes. And same thing from SaaS solution that will build on top of that with Dynamics, so you can have like out of the box solutions for your business processes. And then the last one that I would mention is, and it's related to the conversation that we just had, is responsible AI. So we do think that this is not only about what technology can do, but also how we should do it. And we want to empower our customers to be able to minimize those risks and at the same time develop AI responsible so it can have a positive impact. So everything that I said before, like making sure that we share our practices, that we provide the tools, integrate it into our platform so you can like integrate into your MLOps process so you can easily embrace that responsible AI development.
Great, thank you, David. And we still don't. We still agree.
Yeah, this was a bad one to disagree.
So basically, we're doing these sessions for the community. We've had lots of questions come in. What David and I will do over the next hours, days, have a look at some of those questions. Please feel free to still ask questions, because we will go back and have a look at those questions. And also let me know if there are any topics that you are particularly interested in. If there's anything that you feel we can go deeper in, let us know. I'm super happy to repeat this and do this, make this a regular thing if you have any other questions. So as always, David, a real pleasure. Tomorrow is a bank holiday here in the UK, so I will end this live stream now and head for a nice glass of wine in my garden, I think.
You shouldn't have waited for the end of the podcast, of the live stream.
No, exactly. I should have had my wine here instead of my bottle of wine. Very good. Thank you so much, David, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody.